The 4th of July is just a few days away, and it's a time to celebrate and remember those who have served our country. And over the years, the styles and the way soldiers fight has changed, and so have the people who serve. Women have not always been seen as a crucial part, but over time, they worked their way up the military ladder. Even today, though, there are still a few jobs that women are not allowed to fill. KIMG News 3's Natalie Tendall is taking an inside look at the evolving role of women in the military and covering the Homefront Special Report. She has more from Studio 3.
Whether it was nursing the injured, cooking for the troops, or picking up the responsibilities left behind by a fallen husband, women have served in the military in some way, shape, or form since the year 1775 during the American Revolutionary War, and they still are today. According to 2010 data, there are roughly 2.6 million people enlisted and serving in the military. Women make up roughly 20% of that, and there are 23,000 serving in Minnesota and 15,000 from Iowa. And even though they have come a long way in the armed forces, some say there is still a lot of work to ensure females are seen as equal to their male counterpart. I sat down with a few soldiers of all ages to see what it's like for a woman to go to war. Whether they're Army strong, the few, the proud, the Marines, or aiming high with the Air Force. The year 2012 finds women serving in all branches of the military, but history tells us a much different story.
We were strictly followers in World War II. Had a little bit more in Korea, but in Vietnam, I think we came into our own.
As Agnes Lewis looks back on her career as an Army nurse that started in World War II, she recalls how much the military world has changed and how different a woman's job is.
In the military, they don't look at your sex. You get a point system, you do what you know you have to do to get promoted, and that's how it happens.
Kim Marvetts is a retired National Guard soldier and mother, but for 29 years she served her country, most recently completing a tour in Iraq.
The SAR team is all right!
She believes women today are closer to being equal to men in the military as opposed to the civilian world, but realizes it wasn't always like that. A woman's role in the military has changed over the years, and there are a few important moments that help pave the way. The Women's Army Corps was developed in the 1940s to help women claim their place in the Army. Their main job, nursing. In the 1960s, there were more than 9,000 Army nurses sent into the Vietnam War, and promotion and retirement rules were equalized for all. But it took until the 1980s for women to be a part of active military service. In the early 1990s, a new policy was adopted so they could serve on combat aircraft and ships. However, they were still not allowed to serve on the infantry lines. But by 2011, there was a push for women to be allowed in combat positions, and as of February, more positions have opened up for women. Marvetts could tell you story after story from her time in the service, from training camp to going out on actual patrols. And throughout those experiences, she did notice some differences between females and males, but she believes traits like height, strength, and size don't impact their job.
Women are not as strong as men, but we have other qualities that men don't have. Sometimes it takes a little bit of this, and sometimes it takes a little bit of that. It's not all about strength whatsoever.
Even some male soldiers agree with that. National Guard soldier Gabe Hauglin describes women as an essential part of his team in Afghanistan, especially when traveling through different villages.
There isn't a front line, and so we have to go in there. We have to figure out who the good people are, who the bad people are, and female soldiers help us do that. They help us gather that information.
He remembers sending in their female engagement team to talk with women and children, a job male soldiers were not allowed to do. It's a strategy used to win over a village. Marvetts said they did the same in Iraq.
To deal with some of these Iraqis, it's just a mommy thing. Instead of this gruff, I mean, you got young, scared Iraqis, and they're on your post, and the guys are barking at them, and the women are going, slow down, they're kids.
She says women bring a certain skill set that's helpful in those situations.
The mom thing comes out, and it makes them like a bear cat, and it doesn't make us pussies. Don't mess with us, don't mess with our kids, don't mess with our soldiers.
And even though women are taking part in those missions, they're not allowed in some infantry or ground combat roles, and the Navy SEALs and Army Delta Force are still off limits. Some veterans, like Agnes Lewis, believe women have a big responsibility in the military, but says that place is not on the combat lines.
I think there's a lot that they can do in the combat field that they're not right on the line with the men. I really think it's just the dignity. You lose all your dignity, and that's part of being a woman.
We need a leader!
Marvette says that's not the only debate she's heard. She says some people believe that by nature, men are more protective of women, and that could cause distractions. But she doesn't buy that.
If they realize that they are a soldier first and that they have to follow the guidelines regardless if it's a man or a woman, and they do their jobs as they have been trained to do their jobs, it shouldn't be an issue.
Because sometimes being protective doesn't come down to the sex of the person.
2, 3.
Soldiers are protective of soldiers. It doesn't matter if they're a female or a male. If you see that your buddy is in danger, you're going to rush to help them.
But one challenge is picking up the role as mom when they return.
I was the full-time mom before I left. I was the one who took care of the kids, and so when I came home, they thought I should step into that role, but being in the combat zone that I was in, by the time I came home, I was totally exhausted.
Marvette says it took years for her teenagers to understand why she came back a different person. But even though that was an extremely difficult time in her life, she says she wouldn't have traded her service for anything.
I can honestly say I didn't have a boring life. I made a difference.
Now, sexual assault is still a concern for some in the military. According to the Washington Post, the Air Force is currently investigating a sexual misconduct scandal in its basic training operations, with male boot camp instructors under suspicion of assaulting or harassing female recruits. But assaults and harassment continue to go unreported by a lot of women. According to the Defense Department, last year only 2,300 incidents of sexual assault were reported or investigated by armed services, when an estimated 19,000 cases actually took place. Military leaders and the Defense Department say they will continue to address this problem by encouraging more victims to come forward.
Meanwhile, leaders at the Veterans Affairs Clinic in Mason City say it's important for women to know that adjusting back to civilian life can be difficult. They say it's important to establish the normal family routine and be ready for change.
Coming back home means renegotiating roles and responsibilities. We encourage veterans to not try to make up for a year in just a matter of a few weeks or months, knowing that it'll take time.
And VA clinic leaders also want to remind women that they are available to all veterans, and they have many services catered to women.